Tund, a 32-year-old mechanic, was sweeping the small living room while Amina, his wife, had gone to the market. As he moved into the bedroom, his eyes fell on her handbag lying on the bed, its zipper half open. At first, he ignored it, but something about the way it sat there pulled his attention. He stepped closer, meaning only to tidy it, but curiosity took over. He peeked inside and saw lipstick, receipts, and a small stack of papers. Then, his hand froze. At the bottom, tucked between folded documents, was a worn photograph. He pulled it out slowly. His breath caught in his throat. It was him. A small boy, about 7 years old, smiling in front of his old home. The same picture he thought had burned in the fire that destroyed his childhood house. His hands trembled. How could Amina have this? They only met 3 years ago in another city. When she returned, he asked casually where she found the photo. She paused, then smiled faintly and said she got it from a flea market. The answer didn't sit right with him. Over the next days, he began noticing strange details. She knew his late mother's lullabies and cooked his favorite childhood meal, one he never mentioned. One weekend, Tund told Amina they were visiting a friend but instead drove to his old village. The moment they arrived, an elderly neighbor, Modezzy, saw Amina and gasped, calling her Zainab. Amina's face went pale. Modezzy revealed that Zainab had lived next door and followed young Tund everywhere. She disappeared the same year as the fire. That night, Tund confronted her. With tears in her eyes, she admitted she was Zainab. She had changed her name after leaving and had searched for him ever since. Then she confessed, she was there the night of the fire and knew more about it than she had ever said. Tund felt his chest tighten. The woman he loved had stepped out of the shadows of his past, carrying secrets he wasn't sure he wanted to hear. The photo lay on the table, a silent reminder that his past had found him. Tund's eyes lingered on the half-open handbag. He told himself he was only going to close it, but his hand moved almost on its own. He slid the zipper open and saw the usual things: lipstick, folded receipts, and a neat stack of papers. Then, something small and old caught his eye at the bottom. He reached in and carefully pulled it out. His breath stopped. It was a photograph, the edges frayed and the colors faded with time. But the face in the picture was unmistakable. It was him. A little boy, no more than 7, standing barefoot in front of his old home, smiling like the world was safe. His fingers tightened around it, and for a moment, the air in the room felt heavy. His heart pounded as a memory rushed back. This photo had been his favorite as a child. He used to carry it everywhere, until the night the fire destroyed their house. That night, he'd lost everything: his home, his toys, and that precious photograph. He hadn't seen it in over 2 decades. How could Amina have it? They met only 3 years ago, in a city far from his village. He never told her about the photo. The more he stared, the more questions burned inside him. Had someone from his past found it and given it to her? Had she been to his old home? Why had she kept it hidden? His palms grew sweaty as he imagined all the possibilities. The idea that it might be pure coincidence felt impossible. He sat down slowly, the photograph trembling in his hand. The small boy in the picture seemed to be staring back at him, like he was warning Tund about something. He wanted to believe there was a simple explanation, but his gut told him otherwise. In that quiet moment, surrounded by the ticking clock and distant street noise, Tund realized this wasn't just an old photograph. This was a piece of his lost past, somehow living inside his wife's bag, and it was about to change everything he thought he knew about her. Tund sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the worn photograph like it held a secret he wasn't ready to hear. His mind spun with questions that refused to settle. How could Amina, the woman he met just 3 years ago in a completely different city, have something so personal, so deeply tied to his past? They met by chance, or so he had always believed. She was supposed to know nothing about his childhood, nothing about the boy in the small, tattered picture. Yet here it was, hidden in her bag as if it had been hers all along. The longer he looked, the sharper the memories became. He could still smell the smoke from that terrible night. He remembered waking to shouts, the heat licking at the walls, his mother's frantic hands pulling him outside. In the chaos, he had left the photo on his bed. He cried for days after, not just for the home they lost but for that single image that had been his treasure. It was the last picture taken before life turned dark. Now it was in his hands again, looking exactly as it did before the fire, only older, more fragile. His stomach twisted. Did she somehow go to his village? Did she know someone from his past? Or had she been there all along, somewhere in the shadows of his childhood? The idea made his skin prickle. It didn't make sense, and yet it felt too strange to be a coincidence. He thought about the way she sometimes looked at him, like she knew more than she said. He had brushed it off as love, but maybe it was something else. Holding the photo tighter, Tund felt a chill run down his spine. The image of his 7-year-old self was no longer a sweet memory. It was a question that demanded answers, and he knew those answers might change everything he thought he knew about the woman sleeping beside him every night. Tund heard the front door open and the sound of Amina's footsteps. He quickly slid the photograph onto the table, his heart still racing. She walked in, smiling, carrying a bag of vegetables from the market. He tried to act normal, his voice steady, as he asked, almost casually, "Amina, where did you get this picture?" Her hand stopped midway as she was unpacking. For a split second, her eyes widened, and she stood frozen. Then, just as quickly, she forced a small laugh. "Oh, that?" she said, glancing at the photo like it was nothing. "I found it at a flea market some months ago. Thought the boy looked cute." Her tone was light, but Tund noticed the slight tremor in her voice. He studied her face, the way her smile didn't reach her eyes, the way she avoided looking at him for more than a moment. It didn't make sense. A flea market? How could his lost childhood photo end up there, in a city far from where he grew up? He wanted to push further, but he swallowed his questions. Instead, he nodded slowly, pretending to believe her. Inside, doubt grew heavier. The way she froze before answering, it wasn't nothing. As she moved around the kitchen, humming softly, Tund's mind replayed the moment over and over. She didn't just stumble upon that photograph, he was sure of it. That nervous laugh, the quick deflection, the too simple explanation, it all pointed to something she wasn't telling him. He sat quietly, the photo now back in his pocket, his fingers tracing the worn edges. Every instinct told him that Amina was lying. But why? What was she hiding that made her cover it up so quickly? The evening passed with small talk and dinner, but the air between them felt different. Tund kept his thoughts to himself, deciding not to confront her, not yet. If there was a truth behind her words, he would find it. And deep down, he feared that when he did, it might change the way he looked at his wife forever. It began as small, passing moments, things Tund might have ignored if not for the photograph. One afternoon, while he was fixing a broken chair in the living room, he heard Amina in the kitchen humming softly. The tune froze him in place. It was the same lullaby his late mother used to sing when he was a boy, the one that always made him feel safe. He had never mentioned it to Amina, never sung it himself since his mother's passing. Yet here she was, humming every note perfectly, as if she had known it all her life. A few days later, it happened again, this time with food. Tund came home to the rich, familiar aroma of his favorite childhood dish, a egusi soup cooked exactly the way his mother made it, right down to the tiny, almost hidden slices of smoked fish. He sat at the table, stunned, as she placed the steaming bowl before him. "Thought you'd like something special," she said with a smile. But he had never told her about this meal, never even mentioned that it was his comfort food from years ago. The more he thought about it, the more these small details began to pile up. She used sayings his mother used to say, phrases unique to his village. She seemed to know which streets were quieter, even in parts of the city she had supposedly never been to before. And sometimes, when she looked at him, it felt like she was seeing not the man he was now, but the boy he had been, the one in the faded photograph. Tund kept these observations to himself, but each one felt like a puzzle piece sliding into place, forming a picture he wasn't ready to face. These weren't coincidences. Amina's knowledge of his past was too deep, too personal. At night, as she slept beside him, Tund would stare at the ceiling, the photo hidden in his drawer, and wonder who his wife really was, and how much of his life she had been a part of before he even knew her name. Tund decided he needed answers, but he knew Amina would never tell him the truth if he asked directly. So one Saturday morning, he told her they were going to visit a friend outside the city. She agreed without suspicion, and they set off early, driving for hours until the familiar dirt roads of his childhood village came into view. His chest tightened as memories of the past stirred, but he kept his thoughts to himself. They walked through the narrow paths, greeting a few curious villagers along the way. Tund was watching her closely, trying to catch any sign of recognition on her face. Then it happened. An elderly woman, Modezzy, who had known Tund since he was a boy, came out from her small mud brick house. She squinted at them for a moment, then her eyes lit up in shock. "Zainab," she called out, her voice trembling with disbelief. Amina froze mid-step. The color drained from her face, and her smile faltered. She opened her mouth to respond but no words came out. Tund's heart thudded in his chest. He turned to look at her, but she was staring at Modezzy like she had just seen a ghost. Modezzy walked closer, her wrinkled hands shaking. "It is you. Zainab," she said again, almost in a whisper, as if she couldn't believe it herself. You lived next door, you were always following Tund everywhere. Tund's mind spun. Zainab. The name felt strange yet oddly familiar. He remembered a little girl from years ago. A neighbor who used to trail behind him as they played outside. A girl who disappeared the same year his house burned down. He had almost forgotten her face, until now. He looked at Amina, but she quickly glanced away, her hands clasped tightly in front of her. Her silence spoke louder than words. The drive back to the city was quiet, the air heavy with unasked questions. Tund's suspicion was no longer a shadow in his mind. It had a name, and it came from his own past. Tund stood there in silence, his eyes shifting between Modezzy and Amina. The old woman's voice trembled as she began to speak, her gaze fixed on Amina like she was looking at a memory come to life. Zainab, you lived next door to Tund's family, she said softly. You were always around, following him everywhere he went. You never left his side. Tund frowned, searching his own memories. Faint images surfaced, a small girl with curious eyes, laughing at his jokes, sitting nearby when he fixed his toy cars, running after him in the dusty village roads. He had thought she was just another neighbor's child, nothing more. But Modezzy's words carried a weight that made his skin prickle. The old woman went on, her tone tinged with sadness. Then one night, the fire. Your family's home burned. Everyone was shouting, running, and you, Zainab, you disappeared. No one saw you again after that night. People thought you moved away, but no one knew for sure. It was like you vanished into the air. Tund's breath caught. That night had been chaos, the smoke, the heat, the fear. He had never thought much about the other children in the village afterward. He was too busy trying to survive the loss of his home. But now, hearing that the girl named Zainab had disappeared the same night, a chill ran down his spine. He looked at Amina, or was she Zainab? Her face was pale, her lips pressed tightly together, eyes refusing to meet his. Everything began to make a disturbing kind of sense. The photograph, the songs, the food. It wasn't coincidence. On the way back from the village, Tund barely spoke. His thoughts were a storm. If Amina truly was the girl from his past, why had she hidden it from him? And why had she reappeared in his life only now? Whatever the answer was, Tund knew it wouldn't be simple, and it wouldn't be harmless. That night, back in their small apartment, Tund couldn't keep it in any longer. The silence between them had been heavy since they left the village. He stood in the doorway of their bedroom, the photograph in his hand, his voice low but firm. Who are you really, Amina? She froze, her back to him, then slowly turned around. Her eyes glistened as if she had been holding back tears all day. You already know, she whispered. I want to hear it from you, Tund pressed, his chest tight. She took a deep breath, her hands trembling. I am Zainab, she said at last. The girl who lived next door. The girl who followed you everywhere. The girl who disappeared. The words hit Tund like a sudden wind. He waited for her to go on, his mind flashing back to the dusty roads, the games they played, the night of the fire. I didn't disappear, she continued, her voice breaking. My family moved me away after that night. Things happened, things you don't know. I changed my name when I started over. I had nothing from my old life except memories of you. And I carried those memories everywhere. Tund's throat tightened. So you've been lying to me since the day we met? She shook her head, stepping closer. I didn't lie about loving you. I waited my whole life to find you again. Every city, every place I went, I searched. And when I finally found you, I couldn't risk losing you. I thought if you knew who I was, you might push me away. Her voice trembled, but her gaze stayed locked on his. I just wanted a second chance to be in your life. Tund stared at her, torn between the woman he loved now and the unsettling truth she had just revealed. The photograph felt heavier in his hand, no longer just a piece of the past, but a key to everything that had brought them to this moment. And deep inside, he knew this was only the beginning of the answers he needed. Tund's pulse quickened. Her words from earlier still echoed in his mind, but he sensed she was still holding something back. What happened that night, Zainab? He asked quietly, his voice tense. She looked down, twisting her fingers together, as if deciding whether to speak. Finally, she took a shaky breath. I was there, she said softly. I saw the fire start. Tund's eyes narrowed. You, what? She nodded slowly, her voice trembling. That night, I couldn't sleep. I came outside and saw a light flickering in your house. At first, I thought it was a lamp, but then I saw smoke. I ran closer and I saw someone inside. It wasn't your parents. It was a man I didn't recognize, carrying a small can of kerosene. Tund's stomach churned. Why didn't you tell anyone? I tried, she whispered. But before I could scream, he saw me. He chased me through the dark. I was just a child, I was terrified. I ran home and hid under the bed. When I came out, the fire was everywhere. My parents found me shaking and decided we had to leave immediately. They said it was too dangerous to stay, that the man might come for me. Her eyes filled with tears. I never forgot your face that night. I saw you being pulled out by your mother. I wanted to run to you, but they wouldn't let me. We left before sunrise. I didn't even get to say goodbye. Tun felt the room closing in. All his life, he had believed the fire was an accident. Now, the thought that someone might have started it, and that Amina had been a witness, filled him with cold fear. Why didn't you tell me sooner? He asked, his voice shaking. Because, she said, looking straight into his eyes, I thought the past was buried. But finding you again, I realized the truth was still here. And maybe, that man still is. Her words sent a chill through Tun's spine. The fire wasn't just a tragedy from his past, it was a mystery that had been following them both. Tun sat alone at the small dining table long after Amina had gone to bed. The apartment was quiet except for the faint hum of the fridge. In front of him lay the faded photograph, its worn edges curling slightly. The little boy in the picture stared back at him with an innocence that felt like it belonged to another life, a life before the fire, before the lies, before tonight's confession. His heart felt heavy. He loved Amina, or Zainab, or whatever name belonged to the woman sleeping in the other room. She had been his companion, his comfort, the person who made him believe in happiness again. But now, every memory they had together was tangled with questions. Had she sought him out only out of love, or was there something else she wanted? And what more was she still hiding? He thought about the night of the fire, about the shadow of the man she described, and about the fear in her voice. If what she said was true, then someone out there had destroyed his home on purpose. But why had she kept this secret for so many years? And why now, after finding him again, did she choose to tell him? Tun's hands rested on the table, his fingers brushing the photo. It was more than a picture now. It was a bridge between the boy he once was and the man he had become, a reminder that his past had not been left behind at all. It had been walking toward him for years, wearing the face of the woman he loved. He closed his eyes, feeling the weight of a decision pressing on him. He could hold on to her and risk the truth destroying them, or he could let her go and lose the only person who had waited her whole life for him. When he opened his eyes, the photograph was still there, silent and unchanging. Whatever choice he made, one thing was certain, his life would never be the same again. The past was no longer behind him. It was sitting right in front of him.